There's a pasuk in Chagai, chapter 2. Now remember, Chagai lived about 200 years before the Chanukah miracle. And he says in chapter 2, he quotes God, Vani marish et hashamayim v'ha'aretz. I'm going to do something in the second temple. I'm going to shake up heaven and earth. Tells God to Chagai chapter 2. What is that? Says the Radak and Rashi Chanukah. So even though Chagai lived 200 years before, but the Navi looks into the future, so God tells him, I'm going to shake up heaven and earth. What does that mean in the second temple period? Chanukah. Over 200 years after Chagai lived. Now what's so sensational about Chanukah that God says, I'm going to shake up heaven and earth? The word Chanukah is from the word chinuch. What does chinuch mean? Education. Education. Chinuch, but Chanukah is in the feminine. Chanukah. Because the ikar chinuch of a child comes first from the mother. So Chanukah, chinuch, but it's Chanukah, which is the feminine, because who educates a child first, Yehuda? The mama. So therefore, Chanukah is in the feminine, Sharonov. The root is chinuch, education. It's a spiritual preparation and education to educate, to prepare the world for what? For the light of the Messiah. And we'll see how that is done. Chanukah is such a precious mitzvah because somehow it educates and prepares the world for the messianic light. Now how do we do that? There's a pasuk in Tehillim, chapter 132. Now King David lived centuries before Chanukah, and he says, Orachti ner lemshichi. Yiddish Yehuda? King David in Psalm 132 says, I have prepared a candle for my Messiah. Actually, God is saying that. Psalm 132. Orachti ner lemshichi. God tells King David, I have prepared a candle for my Messiah. So, Pi Kabbalah, what is that candle? The Chanukah candle. So, centuries before, King David is already alluding to the Ner Lemshichi, which is what? Which is the Chanukah candle. Now, somehow, the Chanukah candle will usher in the light of the Messiah. Now, how do we do that? Now, Chanukah comes right after Sukkos, right? It's the holiday that comes right after Sukkos. And if you look at the book of Amos, David, the book of Amos, remember Amos and Andy? The book of Amos, in chapter 9, God tells Amos, Bayoimahu, on that day, Okim es Sukkas David hanoifelet. I'm going to raise up the fallen sukkah of David. What's the fallen sukkah of David? The Beis Hamikdash. Why is it called a sukkah? Because the holiday that comes right after Sukkot is what? Is Chanukah. So somehow, by lighting the Chanukah candle, we're going to usher in the fallen sukkah of David HaMelech, because Chanukah is the holiday that comes right after what? Right after Sukkot. Right? So how do we do that? And why is Chanukah 8 days? There wasn't enough oil for 1 day. Right? Right. So the 1 day, there wasn't enough oil. So the miracle only lasted what? 7. So why do you have an 8-day yontif to celebrate what? A 7-day miracle. To give us an extra day to enjoy jelly donuts. Is that why? Or latkes, an extra day, right? It's only 8 represents infinity, says the Maharal. Teva is 7 days of the week. Right? The 7 Shemitah cycles, 7 times 7. 8 represents what? L'mayla min hateva. Infinity. So Chanukah, that was the Mayla min hateva. According to all odds, there's no way that a little ragtag, little army of what? Of Maccabees can defeat the mighty Greek Empire. So that's represented, says the Maharal, by the number 8. It's l'mayla min hateva. That's why Bris Milah is done, Yehuda, on the 8th day. That's something above nature. According to nature, the Jews never would have survived. They would have been wiped out. They would have been destroyed. Right? So Chanukah was the miracle that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we operate under, not under the laws of Teva. We operate in the sphere number 8. That's infinity, l'mayla min hateva. Yes. Go ahead.
The miracle of 1948.
Exactly, the miracle of the 6-Day War.
Such a little thing.
Right, and the 6-Day War. That's right.
48
No,
is even more important.
right, right.
It's impossible.
Now the message of Chanukah is God waits for us, Yehuda, to make the first move. The Ness only happened when the Maccabees took up arms. Liz, if the Maccabees would not have taken up arms and made the first move, forget about it. So what do we see? God only helps those who help themselves.
Can I quote that in the Russian?
Yes,
account?
God only helps those who help themselves. So therefore, if the Maccabees would not have begun to fight against all odds, Hashem never would have come to their aid. Right? God's help is in direct proportion to what? To our own efforts. So therefore, how come Yosef HaTzadik, David, had to spend the 2 extra years in jail when he asked the butler for what? For help. God only helps those who help themselves. Rashi asked that question. And Rashi says, if the butler was a Filipino or a Puerto Rican, then bavakasha, Brother Joe, go for it. But what do you expect from a mitzvah? Rashi says that to expect anything from a mitzvah, that's worse than doing nothing. You expect a favor from the Arabs, you think they're going to help you, and therefore Yosef HaTzadik was punished because you don't rely on a mitzvah. There's something about them that they're ungrateful, kafu toiv, says Rashi, our peace partners, right? We give them everything. We give them what? Patuach Lumi, and we give them kupat cholim, and jobs, and they what?
Seats in the Knesset.
Seats in the Knesset, incite against us, and we give them free hospital care, and free what? Patuach Lumi, and you think they're going to what? Return the favor? No, they're going to stab you in the back. Rashi's so prophetic, Rabbi Tzalel. Amazing Rashi, and that was the problem. Yosef should have looked for what? For a person from Micronesia or whatever, but to ask a mitzvah for a favor, that's worse than doing nothing, and therefore he was what? Therefore, the Parsha of the week is so always on target. Who are you expecting favors from? Right? Now, who said never have so many owed so much to so few? Who said that? No, before search, we said it to the Maccabees. Never have so many owed so much to so few. The little band of Maccabees, they are the ones that God made this great miracle for. Right? Now, there's a pasuk in the book of Haggai, chapter 2, God tells Haggai, remember Haggai lived at the beginning of the Bayis Sheni, 200 years before Chanukah. He said, Godol yia kovod habayis hazeh ha'acharon min harishon. Greater will be the glory of this house that you're building, min harishon, more than the first house. God says that the second temple is going to be greater than what? Than the first. So how could that be? The Talmud Yuma says that the second temple was a misken. How do you say that in English? A nebuch compared to what? To the first. It didn't have the Urim V'Tumim. It didn't have the ark. It didn't have the tablets. It didn't have the Shem and HaMishcha. There was no Malchus Beis David Yehuda. How could God tell Haggai chapter 2 that this house that you're building is much greater than what? Than the first house. It was pathetic compared to what? The first temple. So how could God tell Haggai that it was greater? So the Zohar says, how is it greater? Because it has Nes Chanukah. Because it has, when was this Nes Chanukah, Rabbi Yaakov? Somehow Nes Chanukah makes the second temple greater than what? The first, according to Haggai chapter 2. How could that be? Why is the Nes Chanukah more important than the ark? The Urim V'Tumim, Malchus Beis David, the Shem and HaMishcha, which was not present in the second temple. And just because it has a Nes Chanukah, God la'yir kavod habayis hazeh ha'acharon min harishon. Why is it greater? And why is the second temple called the Acharon? Was the second temple Acharon? We're waiting. We daven 3 times a day. For Tzemach David Avdecha. There'll be a third temple 3 times. Why is the second temple called Acharon? It's not Acharon, right? So the Zohar says, you have to know how to read the text. In Chagai chapter 2. Godol yeh kavod habayit hazeh, comma, this house that you're building is greater, dash, ha'achron min harishon. Somehow that this second temple that you're building, somehow there's a hyphen there. Godol yeh kavod habayit hazeh, comma, hyphen, achron. The second temple is only a gesher. How do you say gesher in English? The second temple is only a bridge that leads to what? The third temple. And the third temple will be much greater than the first temple. Right? So what's the bridge, says the Zohar, that connects Habayit Hazeh, i.e. the second temple, Yehuda, to Achron, the last temple? What's that bridge called, Yehuda? It's called Chanukah. The question is how? How is Chanukah the bridge that connects Habayit Hazeh, this second temple, to the what? To the Achron. Wow. So the Zohar explains that the second temple is a cornerstone to the Bayis Shlishi. Unlike the first temple, Rabbi Yaakov, nothing was left of the first temple. Nothing. But the second temple, we still have what? The Kotel Maravi. And the Kotel Maravi was reinforced by the Maccabees, Yehuda. So the Zohar says that Kotel Maravi is the cornerstone, the foundation stone of what? Of the third temple. And therefore, the Kotel Maravi can never ever be destroyed. Unlike the first temple, which was totally destroyed. The second remained, the Kotel and the underground tunnels from the Maccabees. The Zohar says, Rabbi Yaakov, that is the cornerstone, Habayit Hazeh, dash, that's going to lead to what? To the Acharon. To what? To the final temple. To what? To the third temple. Now, when we say Sha'osa Nisim Lavoiseinu Bayomim Ahem Bazman Hazeh, God did miracles, Lavoiteinu Bayomim Ahem, but Bazman Hazeh, what does that mean? Bazman Hazeh. God continues to do the miracles. But Moshe Feinstein Zatzal says that the 6-day war, that Ness was on a par of what? Of the Nes Chanukah. He writes in the Igros Moshe that the 6-day war was a miracle as great as what? As the Nes Chanukah. So we make the bracha Bayomim Ahem Bazman Hazeh. Right? So we have to have that in mind that what? That Chanukah miracle is on and on and on. Mike, you like that? On and on. What?
They don't teach
What?
They don't teach the 6-day war in the American.
That's right.
Because they said it's a miracle.
Right.
The American
At West Point, they teach all wars except the 6-day war. The general told Time magazine, I think in 1968 of August, because we don't deal in miracles. We don't deal in miracles, and therefore we cannot study and teach the strategy of what? Of the 6-day war. Right? Now, why is Chanukah such an important mitzvah that the Rambam says, mitzvah chaviva ad ma'od? It's the most precious mitzvah of all. It's not even one of the Taryag mitzvot. Chanukah is one of the 7 rabbinic mitzvot. So how come the Rambam says of Yaakov it's the most precious mitzvah of all? It's not even what? The Raita. So we know there are 613 Torah mitzvot, and we know there are 7 rabbinic mitzvot. 613 plus 7 is Gematria Keter. Keter is what? 620. What's the last of all the mitzvot, historically? Chanukah. There are 7 rabbinic mitzvot, saying Hallel, making brachas, Purim, Netilas Yadayim, Eruv. But the last of the rabbinic mitzvahs historically, Reb Tzalel, was what? Chanukah. Chanukah is the most precious mitzvah because Achron Chaviv, Dr. Abramson, it completes the Keter. Keter is Gematria 620. There's 613 Torah mitzvahs, and there are 7 rabbinic mitzvahs. So the last of the mitzvahs historically made up by the bezin of the Chashmonaim during the Second Temple period in the middle, that completes the Keter, and therefore the Rambam says that mitzvah chaviva ad ma'od, because we know in Judaism, achron chaviv. Therefore, when do you get the Viennese table? At the end of the meal. Because when do you get the Viennese table at a wedding? Why at the end of the meal? Why not at the beginning? Because saving the best for last. So since Chanukah is the last of the 620, it completes the Keter. So therefore the Rambam calls it what? The most precious mitzvah. It completes the Keter. There are 620 mitzvot. 613 min HaTorah and 7 what? Rabbi Tzalel, how many letters are there in the Ten Commandments? 620. You don't believe it? You can count. There are 620 letters in the Ten Commandments. Each letter, Sharona, represents what? A mitzvah. Taryag plus 7 rabbinic mitzvahs. Even the rabbinic mitzvahs are represented what? By what? A letter in the Ten Commandments, but not the Ten Commandments. It never says 10 Commandments, that's the movie. It says Aseret HaDvarim. 10 words or 10 things that sum up the 620 mitzvahs. Taryag min HaTorah and 7 the Rabbanan. So every time you do the Rabbanan mitzvah, you're also doing the Devarim 17:11. Listen to the rabbis. Before you light Chanukah candles or Friday night candles, Liz, you make a bracha v'tzivanu. Last time I checked, God did not command me to light Chanukah candles or Friday night candles. So how do you make the bracha v'tzivanu? So the Talmud in Shabbos 21 says, the Heichen Tzivanu, Devarim 17:11. It says, listen to the Chachamim. Don't turn away to what the rabbis tell you right over, right? So every time you do a Rabbanan mitzvah, lighting Chanukah candles, Shabbos candles, Purim, saying Hallel on Yom Tov or today, so every time you do a rabbinic mitzvah, you're automatically also doing what? A Torah mitzvah of listening to the Chacham in Deuteronomy 17:11. So every time you do a Rabbanan mitzvah, Mickey, it's a twofer. Right? You're listening to the rabbis and you're also listening to the Torah, which tells you, Torah doesn't say light Chanukah candles, Rabbi Yaakov, but the Torah does say what?
Listen to the rabbis.
Listen to the rabbis. Deuteronomy 17:11, you can look it up. Whatever the rabbis tell you, do. Don't turn away to the right or the left. So therefore we make a bracha before we light Chanukah candles, before what? We wash for bread, we make b'tzivanu. Where does the Torah command us to wash for bread? Doesn't. But it says, listen to the Chachamim. So washing for bread, the rabbis say wash for bread, one of the 7 rabbinic mitzvot. So if you listen to the Chachamim, you're also doing a Torah mitzvah. It's amazing. So when you're doing a Rabbanan mitzvah, Yehuda, you're getting a twofer. Jews like a bargain, 2 for 1.
Rabbi Sprecher,
Yes.
is it true that Hashem said to the Jews to go attack the Grecians, because
The Greeks.
the Jewish souls, and
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
the only reason they won against Greece was because Hashem was backing them.
Exactly.
When the Romans, they attacked the Romans, the Hashem did not give his okay.
Oh, Michael, you must have ESP. Michael must have ESP. Okay? Stay tuned. Now, I'm going to give you the Kabbalistic answer of why Chanukah is the most precious mitzvah and why God came to help the Maccabees, but he let down the zealots. He let the zealots down. 200 years after Chanukah, the zealots, they said, we are the new Maccabees. Yocham and Zakkai said, forget about it. They said, why? God helped us 200 years ago. Why not now? We'll talk about why. So Michael gave the answer. Because the Maccabees, their war was a war for Shemen. Now, why did God manifest his miracle with the Shemen? The entire temple service was canceled, Michael. There was no Ketores either. There was no Karbanot. Nothing. The Greeks destroyed everything. Why didn't God make incense appear or the Korban Tamid appear? Why did God focus Dafkan Shemen? Shemen is Rosh Tevot, Shabbat, Mila, Nida. If you want to sum up the entire Jewish religion, Rabbi Yaakov, The Greeks made it a capital offense if you kept the following 3 mitzvot. Shin stands for Shabbat Chodesh. If you kept Shabbat or Rosh Chodesh, capital punishment. Mem stands for what? Mila. And Nun stands for Nida. Why did the Greeks zero in on these 3 mitzvot? To make it capital punishment. Because the entire Jewish religion, if you want to sum up in one word, Ariella, it's Shemen. Shabbat dash Chodesh, sanctifying time, and Mila Nida, you're sanctifying what? Your body. That's Yahadut. Judaism's goal is what, Yehuda? Shabbat Chodesh, sanctify time, not to kill time, sanctify time. And Mila Nida through Bris Mila and Taras HaMashpacha. What are we doing, Dr. Abramson? We're sanctifying our body. That's Judaism. Any mitzvah you can think of, the goal is, Rabbi Yaakov, to sanctify time, or to what? Sanctify the guf. That not just the neshama is holy, but the body that we share with an animal, we can even sanctify the body. Wow, what a concept. The Greeks wanted to stamp that out. So therefore, God chose to manifest his miracle, Dafkan Shemen, Shabbat Mila Nida, to prove, Michael, that the Maccabees were fighting not for glory, not for booty, not for fame, not for fortune, but it was a holy war. It was a war for Shabbat Mila Nida, a war for the godly soul, the Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. Therefore, God came to help them. But Yochanan and Zakkai told the zealots, you guys are phonies. You're not fighting for Judaism. You're fighting for glory, spoils, fame, and fortune. Why should God come and help you? So therefore, God did not come to help the zealots at the end of the Second Temple period, because that was a war for personal glory. Unlike the Maccabees, it was a war for what? Shemen, the original jihad. The holy war. It was a war for Judaism. Not for glory or fame and fortune like the zealots, for selfish reasons. It was a war for Yahadut, for the godly soul. And that's represented by what? The Ner. I'm a soul, man. Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. The godly soul is represented by what? By a candle. Therefore, you light a candle for a neshama. The godly soul is like a flame. The flame always rises up. You try to put a candle upside down, the flame will what, Yehuda? The godly soul has to go back home. Always rising up. Now, according to the Kabbalah, Dr. Abrams, the Bnei Yissaschar, my great-great-grandpa, great mystic, he says that the verdict of Yom Kippur is really not completed, Rebbe Tzalel, until when? Today. What's it all about? Chanukah. Chanukah. The seal of Yom Kippur is not completed until Chanukah, says the Bnei Yissaschar, based on what? On the Kabbalah. Why? There's a mystical link to what? Of Yom Kippur to what? To Chanukah. Is Chanukah an extension to Yom Kippur? How and why? And why is Chanukah the most precious mitzvah? Well, a Jew answers a question with a question. Is there a mitzvah to put your matzah in the window? No. Why not? Is there a mitzvah to put your shofar in the window? No. Is there a mitzvah to put your Megillah in the window? No. Ma nishtana Chanukah. Why do I got to put the candle in the window? I have to put my tefillin in the window? No. What about my shofar, Sharona? I'm going to put my shofar in the window. No. Ma nishtana Chanukah, Rebbe Tzalel, that's the only mitzvah that you have to shove it in the window. And parsume nisa. What's why? I think I'll put a shofar in the window. Why? There's no other mitzvah to display in the window except the Neiros Chanukah. And this is the secret of the mystical link between Chanukah and Yom Kippur, and why Chanukah is the most precious mitzvah. On Yom Kippur, what do? What do we proclaim on Yom Kippur? We fast, we don't take showers, we have no relations. Yom Kippur, I'm publicizing, I'm a soul man. The soul couldn't care less about eating or drinking or taking showers or putting on makeup. Yom Kippur, I'm emphasizing that I am much more than my bodysuit. Yom Kippur, you forget about the body. What do you concentrate, Beryl? On the soul. The soul couldn't care less about manja. So Yom Kippur, I'm telling the world, I'm proclaiming to the world, I'm publicizing the fact that I am much more than my bodysuit. I am the godly soul. That's Yom Kippur. Chanukah, the Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, the human soul is compared to what? To a candle. You know why it's Persume Nisan Chanukah? Why do I have to put a candle in the window? Who can see the godly soul? It's covered up. So Chanukah, like Yom Kippur, what am I proclaiming, Liz? I'm a soul man. Yom Kippur, you proclaim it by what? By fasting, by ignoring the body. You're proclaiming you're a soul man. And on Chanukah, how do you proclaim you're a soul man? No, by putting the Ner in the window. The Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, the candle represents the godly soul. Who sees the godly soul? I can't see it. But by placing it in the window, I am drawing attention, Beryl, that I am much more than my bodysuit. I'm a godly soul. Focus on the candle. That's the Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam. So on Yom Kippur, we play that up by fasting, and on Chanukah, we play that up by what? It's a festival of lights, the festival that proclaims, like Yom Kippur, I'm a soul man. Yom Kippur by fasting, ignoring the body, and on Chanukah by playing up the fact that even though you can't see my candle, my godly soul, the eternal flame, but it's there, it's just covered up. So I got to publicize it, because who thinks about it? And therefore Chanukah is the most precious mitzvah of all, says the Rambam, because it emphasizes the fact that I am a godly soul. Wow. Isn't that amazing? And therefore Chanukah is such an important, precious mitzvah, and that's its mystical link to Yom Kippur, and therefore the final seal, Rabbi Yaakov, is held up until when? Chanukah. Right? Because what are we proclaiming? What does it mean to be a Jew? I'm much more than my bodysuit. The body is just a cover. It's not really me. I'm the godly soul. Yom Kippur proclaims that by abstaining from what? Bodily comforts. And Chanukah proclaims that by dafka playing up the fact of the candle. Everybody rallies around the candle, and you light the candle again and again. Even when you did it in your house, you go to a Hanukkah party, you light the candle again. You go to a wedding, you light the candle again. What's the candle? It helps me focus who I really am. I'm the Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam.
But you light a candle on Yom Kippur too.
That's very good. That's right. That's you light a Erev Yom Kippur. You light a candle Yom Kippur too. It's the same idea, but you don't light it in the window. Because you're fasting, so that plays up a fact. The fasting alone plays up the fact that I'm a soul man. But Chanukah, you don't fast, right? Chanukah, you play up the fact that I'm a godly soul by publicizing the godly soul, which is the Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam.
But
Right?
There's no chiyuv in a meal either.
What? Why? Good question. All the other Yom Tovim, right? They try to kill us. We won. Connie, let's eat. Isn't that the theme of all the Chagim?
Yes.
Right? They try to kill us. We won. Manja. Ma nishtana Chanukah. It's the only Chag there's no mitzvah to eat. Donuts and latkes, Liz, that's optional. You know why you eat the donuts? Because when you eat the donut, it burns in your stomach 8 days. You'll remember the miracle of the 8 days. It'll lay there for 8 days. Boy, you'll remember the 8-day miracle. It's Brent. It's not a mitzvah to eat latkes or donuts. It's a minhag because it tastes good. No, to play up the idea that shemen, the miracle happened through oil, so latkes and donuts are fried in olive oil. So you remember the miracle of the olive oil. But that's only a minhag. There's no mitzvah to have a Suda. You know why? Because Chanukah was a civil war. We like to sweep it under the rug. Who were the Maccabees' first victims? Fellow Jews. The Maccabees were super charedim. They fought assimilation, right? Benzi Gupstein, he would be a Maccabee. Benzi Gupstein. They fought assimilation. They fought Jews that wanted to assimilate and mix with the Goyim. It was a civil war, Yehuda. It was Jew against Jew. How can you have a Suda, Dr. Abramson, when Jew is fighting another Jew? So therefore, that's the reason there's no mitzvah to have a Suda. Chanukah, we forget, was a civil war. Therefore, Pashas Miketz is always read on Chanukah, because Yosef and the brothers was a civil war, brother against brother. Yosef against the brothers, there was a civil war, and therefore the Pashas Miketz is always read when, Beryl? Chanukah was a civil war, we like to ignore it. It was fellow Jew against fellow Jew, the Maccabees against the Hellenists, the assimilated Jews, and therefore when Jew is fighting Jew, you cannot sit down and have a meal, and that's the reason why, one reason why, there's no mitzvah to have a meal on Chanukah.
Don't forget the brothers ate.
What?
Remember the brothers ate when they sold Yosef.
That's right. So anyway, Chanukah mitzvah chaviva ad ma'od, right? Shemen, Shabbos, Mila, Nida. But the Zealots, as Michael pointed out, 200 years later, the Zealots failed. Because Yochanan and Zakkai saw that you guys are phonies. You're not fighting for Shemen. You're not fighting a holy war for God. You mean yourself. Glory, beauty, fame, and fortune, and therefore you're going to fail. They didn't listen, and they were what? Wiped out by the Romans. It was only 200 years later. Right? Right?
Also, they took the wolf.
What? No, so now, Reb Aaron is asking an interesting question. So then God made the great miracle of Chanukah through the Maccabees. How come Mashiach did not come right after that? The great military victory and the Pach Shemen, right? Why didn't Mashiach come right then and there? That was an opportune time. They cleansed the temple. They rededicated the altar. So why didn't Mashiach come?
Because they set up their,
Why?
They set up their civil government like that.
Says the Ramban, they were Kahanim. So, right?
They didn't anoint it.
Why didn't Mashiach come? That was the time. So to answer this question, you have to what?
Ask another.
Chanukah is the most precious mitzvah of all. Isn't it bizarre that the most precious mitzvah of all not only doesn't have a tractate, doesn't even have a Mishnah? Masechta Purim has a whole tractate, Masechta Megillah, right? All the Yom Tovim, Masechta Shabbat, Masechta Psachim, Masechta Sukkah, Masechta Megillah, all the Chagim have a whole tractate. Chanukah not only does it not have a tractate, it doesn't even have what? One little Mishnah. It has 3 lines in the Gemara, like under the table. The most precious mitzvah of all doesn't deserve its own tractate, let alone what? A Mishnah? What's going on? Huh? So, the Chav Sofer answers as follows. The Ramban says the Maccabees were great heroes and tzaddikim, but they committed a terrible sin. And they were punished. They all got killed out. Because after they won the victory, they proclaimed themselves as king. They should have handed over the kingship to Yehuda. There's a pasuk in Pashas Vayechi, Rabbi Aaron, Lo Yoser Shevet Me Yehuda. Kingship can only remain with Shevet Yehuda. So after their great military victory, they proclaimed themselves and their children kings, which was a sin, says the Ramban, for not handing over the kingship to whom? To Yehuda. Therefore, the Maccabees were punished. They were killed out. And therefore, Mashiach did not come right after the Chanukah miracle. If the Maccabees would have given the kingship over to what? To Yehuda, David Yehuda, that tribe, Mashiach would have come right then and there. But great people have great egos. Yeah? Who said it's good to be the king? Who said that? It's good to be the king. So it's good to be the king. They didn't want to give it up. Therefore, they were punished by being killed out. and therefore the Mashiach did not come, said the Chassam Sofer, and therefore they're not in the Mishnah. Because Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi comes from which tribe? Yehuda. Yehuda HaNasi is a descendant of King David. So it's like he had it in for them, hard to understand. He blackballed them, surely, since they stole the kingship from his family. So therefore, Rabbi, who wrote the Mishnah, kept them out. And therefore, you won't find not only a tractate, you won't even find the Mishnah, because he blackballed them because they refused to give the kingship to the family of Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, and that prevented what? The Mashiach from coming. And another reason was, we forget that the Chashmonaim themselves, their grandchildren, they fought a civil war. Sharona, you know that? It was one Chashmonai brother against the other one. Hyrcanus against Aristobulus. Did you know that?
And they called in the Romans.
Exactly. Hyrcanus turns to Pompey. Hyrcanus had a civil war with his brother. This is the grandchildren of the Maccabees. So Hyrcanus turned to Pompey in a civil war against his brother. That's how Rome got here. The Ramban says, how did Rome come to Eretz Yisrael? Hyrcanus called in Pompey to back him against his brother, and that led Rome here. We invited our own enemy into our country, and they took over. Current events. We brought back the terrorist Arafat from Tunisia. We brought Arafat, that rat. We brought him from Tunisia back, and he became our peace partner. So history keeps repeating itself. The Jews brought Rome in here. One Maccabee brother against the other, the grandchildren of the Maccabees, and they caused a civil war, and Rome destroyed the temple, and we, our own worst enemy, we brought back the terrorists from Tunisia. We brought them back as a peace partner, and we're still suffering today. So we see that we are what? Our worst own enemies. We never learn, Rabbi Yaakov Goldberg, we don't learn from history.
Who was the one that brought him back? Who was the one that brought the Romans into...
The Ramban says that Hyrcanus, imagine it took a Greek name, Hyrcanus, to fight his brother Aristobulus. These were the grandchildren of the Maccabees. The Ramban in Pashti Vaychi has a whole arichas there, why the Maccabees were punished, why they're not in the Mishnah, because they brought Rome in here. Because one brother wanted to fight the other, so he brought in Pompey to be his ally. Once you invite the bear into your living room at Salil, the bear is not going to leave. So we invited the Arafat, the rat, back into our living. We brought him back and rehabilitated him as a peace partner. And never, how many casualties? How many dead? Thousands. And how many crippled and wounded? We are our worst own enemies.
So we should call Shimon Peres Hyrcanus.
Hyrcanus against, right? Unfortunate, right? And therefore, they're not in the Mishnah. They stole the kingship, and therefore what? They're not in the Mishnah. They're not in, and therefore Mashiach did not come after what? After the Nes Chanukah. You know, they wrote a Megillah. If you take a look in the back of the Birnbaum Siddur, he has the whole Megillah there. It's called Megillas Chashmonaim. Philip Birnbaum, remember him? The back of his Siddur, you have it there. Now, who wrote the Megillas Chashmonaim? Sadia Goen says that the 5 sons of Matisyahu, they wrote Megillas Chashmonaim. And it starts off, Ahi b'mei Antiochus melech Yavan. Just like He b'mei Achashverosh. Remember, this Megillah was written about 210 years after the Purim story. So it's copied after Ahi b'mei Achashverosh, about 210 years after the Purim story. Ahi b'mei Antiochus melech Yavan. And Sadia Gaon said it was written by what? The 5 sons of Matasyahu, the Maccabees. Yet it's not part of Tanakh. It's not part of Tanakh.
The Goyim read it, don't they?
Why? The Goyim read it. It's called Megillat Chashmonaim. You can find in the back of the Birnbaum Siddur. It is modeled. You see how the language is so similar, Chaya, to what? Megillas Esther. But it didn't make it into the canon. Why didn't it make it into the canon? Because the canon was closed. It's closed. The last book in the Tanakh is what? Megillat Esther. Written by Esther. Esther and Mordechai were Nevi'im. But right after that, prophecy was what? closed. So therefore, the Megillas Chashvenoyim did not make it into the canon because there were no prophets anymore, and therefore it has no kiddush at all. But it is what? An historical account. According to Saadia Gaon, written by the Maccabee brothers itself. So it gives the whole story over here, and it says, it ends up very similar. It says, Yekibla Malchut Bnei Chashvenoi, and that they reigned, Motayim, that the temple, after the Nes Chanukah, the Rambam uses this, the temple remained for 206 years. So we know the second temple, Betzalel, stood for how many years? 420. So the miracle of Chanukah historically took place smack dab in the middle of what? Of Second Temple. Because the Chashvenoyim write that the temple continued to stand for another 206 years. Their grandchildren finished the book, and the temple was destroyed 206 years after what? The Nes Chanukah. And the Second Temple, Yehuda stood for how many years? 420. So therefore they write, Yimei Mishteh v'Simcha. The same language of what? Of Megillas Esther. But we did not accept Yimei Mishteh v'Simcha. We don't, no mitzvah have Mishteh v'Simcha. Because when Jew is fighting Jew, brother against brother, how could you have a Mishteh v'Simcha? But they wrote Yimei Mishteh v'Simcha, taken directly from the Megillas Esther. Megillas Esther is Yimei Mishteh v'Simcha, but Chanukah is not. And that's the reason why. What? No, they just say Yemei Mishteh v'Simcha. No, they don't write that. No, right? What?
Only the Rambam says you're supposed to have simcha.
You're supposed to have simcha. So Ivdut Hashem b'Simcha. You're supposed to have simcha every day. Ivdut Hashem b'Simcha. Tehillim 100. Ivdut Hashem b'Simcha. It says you're supposed to serve God. Tehillim 100. You're supposed to serve God with joy, but not necessarily with a meal. In Chanukah, there is no mitzvah to have a meal. It's optional. And the reason is because Chanukah, we forget, was a civil war. And later on, the Maccabees themselves are also fighting among themselves. Ad kedei kach, that they what? That they brought the Rome here. The Ramban says they brought Rome here, and that Rome finally destroyed us. And hopefully we're not making the same mistake again.
You did.
Unfortunately, right? Yeah. So anyway, the story of Chanukah is the story of what? Of God helping those who help themselves, right? Now, the temple was destroyed, Yehuda. So when the temple was destroyed, how come Chanukah was not canceled? Connie, you hear my question? So celebrate Chanukah for another 206 years. But 206 years after the Chorban Bayis Sheni, Beryl, the temple was destroyed. So why do we continue to celebrate Chanukah even after the temple was destroyed?
Because if we don't keep on it,
Why?
we won't get the third temple.
Beautiful, Michael. Because we said, Al Pi Kabbalah, that the Neros Chanukah is the bridge that leads to Bayis Shlishi. So even though there is no temple, but every time you light the Chanukah candle, says King David in Tehillim 132, Orachti ner lemshichi, Rabbi Yaakov. You are preparing a ner. So even though there is no temple, somehow the light of Chanukah will usher in the messianic light of Mashiach, because the light of Chanukah, we said, represents what? The godly soul. If enough people focus on a soul, man, if enough people realize that the ikar of the human being is not what? But the soul, if enough people acknowledge that, Betzalel, then what? Mashiach will come. Don't you see? If enough people focus on the godly soul, the Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, the candle, which is the human soul, if enough people acknowledge and focus on that, that will usher in the light of the Messiah.
Like having a Jewish baby brings the Mashiach closer.
That's right, same idea. The Talmud says in Sotah, Rabbi Tzal, every time you have another baby, you're bringing the Mashiach a step closer, right? It's a process. How do you say, la'at la'at, tzibislach? How do you say tzibislach? Slowly, tzibislach, a little bit of light, Rivka, a little bit of light dispels what? Much darkness. You ever light one candle in a dark room?
Makes it light.
Makes it light. Does reality change?
No.
The furniture is still there, but you're not bumping into it, Nechama. The light doesn't change reality. The furniture is still there, right? But you're not bumping your toe anymore. Why? Why? The light, the godly light. What's the godly light? The neshama. If enough people focus on that, then the light of Mashiach will what? Blaze. But many people are fooled. They think what you see is what you get. All I am is a body, right? Feed me, right? It's all about the body. But if enough of us focus on the godly soul, the light of the godly soul, which is the light of the Shekhinah, then God will take off his mask. But we got to push the buttons, right? God is waiting for us to acknowledge that we're much more than a body, that we're the candle of God, the eternal flame, right? The body dies, but the soul what? You ever look at a candle, Liz? The wax melts, but the flame what? The wax melts, that's like the body decaying. But that's not me, that's just the wax. I'm the eternal flame. The Ner Hashem Nishmat Adam, and therefore you light a candle. Even non-religious people light a candle for what? For a godly soul. They know that the godly soul is eternal. The flame will always rise up. So that's what Chanukah acknowledged, the Nes, and that even though there is no temple, but the Nes of what? What's the Nes, Yehuda? That Hitler can destroy the body. Abu Mamzer can destroy the body, but not the godly soul. The Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam will be eternal.
What's the concept of Mahadran?
What?
What's the concept?
Mahadran mina Mahadran. What's that? Mahadran mina Mahadran. That why? It's enough that Neri Shubeto. It's enough Neri Shubeto. Mahadran mina Mahadran. Everybody lights a candle. Everybody's a unique godly soul. That my mission is not your mission. Right? All flames look alike. All souls look alike, but each soul has a unique mission. Right? My mission is not your mission. How do I know, Yehuda? Are my fingerprints your fingerprints? So just like God does not run out of fingerprints, he doesn't run out of what? Missions. Each soul has a unique mission to accomplish. So when you look at the candle tonight, what are you supposed to focus on, Yehuda? I'm a soul, man. And what's my godly mission? To give light. Madlik umeitiv et anerot. To do good to my ner and to someone else's ner. How do you do that? Madlik. What does madlik mean? To light what? Abren. To be excited about Judaism. To be excited. That's how you meitiv. That's how you fix and you do good to your soul and to your fellow human being's soul. By being excited, by being happy to help him. You know, some people write a check for tzedakah that look like they're constipated. You again. Be happy when you do a mitzvah. You give tzedakah, you study Torah. Be on fire. That's an avodah. That is something. Now, King David says in Psalm 27, L'David Hashem Oiri, he says, Shifti beveit Hashem, I want to live in God's house, ulevake behecholo. This is the punchline of the whole shir. Psalm 27, Rabbi Yaakov, we still got 4 minutes. Shift is the punchline. Shifti beveit, King David, Psalm 27, L'David Hashem Oiri. I want to live in God's house, ulevake behecholoi, but I want to be a tourist. If you want to live in God's house, what's God's house? Eretz Yisrael, right? Pisgat Zev, Rechavia, God's house is Eretz Yisrael. Ulevake b'chol, and I want to be a tourist in his house. So Rav Soloveitchik says, King David, make up your mind. If you're living in God's house, why do you want to be a tourist for?
You don't have to pay taxes.
Oh, beautiful, Rivka. So Rav Soloveitchik explains, remember the first time you went to the kotel?
How exciting.
I'm so excited. Abren. But after a while, Chaya, it wears off. King David prays, I want to live in God's house. I want to live in Jerusalem. But I want to have the enthusiasm of a bikur. I want to remain a tourist. I don't want it to rub off, that excitement, that bren, that madlik. Even though I'm living here 20 years, Baruch Hashem, I'm trying to fire myself up. When I go to the kotel, I should be on fire like I was the first time. It's hard to do, but that's what we have to do. Shifti Veis Hashem, but Ulvaker B'Choloi. Psalm 27. Right? So that's the avodah, to be excited about our Judaism. I think it's called holy enthusiasm. That's an avodah. You got to psych yourself up.
New restaurant.
Right?
New restaurant.
What's it called?
Holy enthusiasm.
Oh, I can't name my restaurant that? Holy enthusiasm. Wow. But that's an avodah, Rabbi Yaakov. To get up every morning and to pinch myself that I have the schus to what? To live in Eretz Yisrael in Jerusalem. Moses didn't have that schus. Who am I compared to Moses in the Vilna Gaon? Listen, I have that schus. I have to pinch myself. I have to be happy about it and on fire about it. And that's the avodah of what? Of a Chanukah. Any questions, comments? Enjoy your donuts and your latkes. Thank you very much.